Let's do it. Let's do it. Broadcasting from around the world, you're listening to The First 100, a podcast on how founders acquired their first 100 paying customers. Here's your host, Hadi Radwan.
Vidit, good to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Hadi. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for stopping by all the way from Singapore, I guess. Vidit
I'm actually doing this in Jakarta.
In Jakarta, okay.
Indonesia, yeah.
Amazing. Vidit Agrawal is the founder of GajiGesa, which is a financial wellness platform for employers that are looking for a powerful fintech platform to help millions of their hardworking employees control their financial lives. I think you have an app and a lot of interesting tools on it to improve the long-term financial health of employees, and we'll talk about that in the podcast. You've raised 12 million to get there. Take us back to the top, Vidit. What was the idea behind GajiGesa?
Yes, it's a very interesting story. First of all, my co-founder is my wife. We started this together. This was the middle of COVID. We're talking about April, May. Remember those dark days of starting? We both were sitting in our balcony and we were talking about what do we want to do in our careers. I was leading partnerships for APAC at Stripe, and she was leading product for Standard Chartered Bank. So both of us were in very cushy jobs, very comfortable, but we felt a bit unsatisfied, mid-30s. What do we want to do with our lives? So we started thinking, okay, maybe this is the right time to get our hands dirty and start something new, like that FOMO at that point of time. So we started talking a lot about different ideas, and my wife, who has a lot of expertise in fintech and credit scoring the unbanked customer, mentioned the model of earned wage access. She was following this for a while. In the UK, US, the product's been massively successful. And we started thinking about what if we were to bring this model to Indonesia, where we have blue-collar workers who get generally paid $250 to $300 US per month, as low as that, once a month, not like the US where you get twice a month, and the impact we could have on those workers. During our careers, for me, when I was at Uber for many years, I'd seen drivers across Southeast Asia, again, making that $250 per month, struggling to make ends meet, and often stuck with loan sharks. And similar for her, when she was credit scoring the unbanked customers in Philippines and Indonesia, a common theme, again, was workers would go to these loan sharks and get stuck in that cycles. And that is where we were like, we need to solve this problem. One, it could be really big in Southeast Asia. But two, it is very close to our heart. It's something we've seen in our jobs for the last 10 years. So yeah, that's how we decided to do this together. We packed our bags in the middle of COVID. We took a single ticket, one-way ticket, landed in Indonesia, and now it's been close to 4 years.
Amazing story, especially when you do it with your beloved ones. I believe your customers are the employers in that case. Before we go into how you got these first 100 paying customer, what does the employer expect to get from your platform?
Yeah, so again, it was very interesting because 2020 doing product research was not easy because we all were stuck at homes. So we started talking to as many business owners as we could through our networks. And we had a basic questionnaire where we wanted to understand what were the common pain points they were facing. Now, there is this model of kasbon, which means early access to salary. That's exactly what happens in Indonesia, where workers have gone to their employers, and this is not new. This has been happening for decades, where they go to the employer and say that, hey, I'm really short of money. I don't have anything. Can you help me out with a few days of salary? And you can cut it from my payroll at the end of the month. And the alternative is, if you don't do that, the worker is not going to show up the next day. So employers have no choice. This is a big problem for the employers because one, it affects their finances, right? Like they have to put capital in the middle of the month. And at the same time, the accounting and tracking of all these little token monies that is given to the employees is very challenging. So that's the problem. We narrowed it down. And it was there for a company which had blue collar workers, factory workers, restaurant staff, as good as like sometimes tech staff, which is generally well paid. So that was where we were like, okay, employers have this problem. This is a common challenge. This is something they hate doing, but it is something they have to do. and we can come in and solve that problem for them.
Amazing. Take us back to the early moments. How did you find those customers? Where were they? How did you reach out to them early on? What was the most challenging part of landing the early first few customers?
Yeah, so both me and my spouse and my co-founder have spent over 10 years in Indonesia in different work capacities. So we had a very good network, which meant that getting our first 10 customers was actually easy, because either it was an angel investor who said, okay, fine, you use my company as test bed, or it was a friend who said, I've known you for years. Okay, fine, I'll give you certain employees and you experiment on them. So for us, the first 10 was easy. Getting the 11th one was the challenging one, when we had exhausted our close friends who were ready to be guinea pigs. So that is where I think, again, I don't think it's anything special, but the referrals were very strong. What we realized was that HR's human resources teams hold a special place in the company, and they can be very powerful in influencing the employers. So that is where we spent a lot of time building a strong network, socializing our product, and our initial 10 HRs brought a lot of their friends to GajiGesa and say, hey, this is working very well in my company. Why don't you try it out? So that was something that really worked for us. And then very quickly we realized in the cycle that communities are very powerful. Again, we are B2B, right? So we don't have to put billboards on the street. So we were very targeted, and we started focusing on HR communities across Indonesia. We started reaching out to them. We started joining their events. Largely they were online, started educating them about this new model of earned wage access and the impact it can have. And that was very powerful for us as well, because often we would have this starting point was a friend's company. We got connected to the HR who referred us to a bunch of other companies. And these companies said, why don't you join our events in the HR community, HR associations? So that chain worked out pretty well for us.
That's a great story. Were you early on providing only the platform, or were you actually also subsidizing the cost, meaning you're giving the wages in advance, like a mini loan? Yeah.
So we have both kind of partners. Certain employers have excess capital and they say that, why don't you use my capital, and we become a technology solution. And there are certain employers who say that I would want you to provide the capital. What we realized was a large part of the businesses wanted us to provide capital. So we're very clear that this could be a product that could be monetized, but at the same time, we would require a lot of debt to support this.
Amazing. If you go back to the early days, did you employ any non-scalable strategies that you had to do just to maybe prove product market fit or get the early customers, but you know that it's not something you would like to continue doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've gone through the journey of automation at multiple stages, but one of the things which I would say was very manual was our onboarding process. First stage onboarding, and it was by design, because we wanted to meet the customer. We wanted to talk to the customer, look at them while they use the app, and learn from their mistakes and the challenges they were facing. But it was a very manual process where we would go to a company and they'll bring their employees in, say, a community hall or a gathering or an open area. Then we will literally have a speaker and announce how the app works, maybe a projector, walk them through, answer their questions, and then onboard them. And the process used to take more than an hour. And even though every exercise was a few hundred employees, but it was clearly not scalable, right? Because we couldn't travel to all the parts of Indonesia. Indonesia has, 15,000 islands, and there was no way we could scale. But again, that process really taught us so much about our onboarding, so much about our app, the reactions of the users, the struggles of the users, like what was working, what wasn't working, what did they like? And often in those conversations, we were given feedback. Why don't you add this feature? Why don't you add prepaid phone top-ups? Can I pay my electricity bill on this app? So a lot of that feedback we were incorporating in our future product development.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, customer interviews remain the most important tool to make upgrades to your product. If you think about the way you approached your marketing and sales channels, what were your key criteria to look at early on to decide which channel to go after and experiment in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I thought about criterias, ROI was very important, especially when you do sales and marketing and you're not very clear on the return. We didn't want to be in a situation where we burn $500,000 and then realize that, it's not working. So we always focused on very small pilots, very strong observation, lot of analysis, and then expanded those programs. I think that saved us a lot of dollars, right? So I think analysis was very important for our channels. Secondly, there was a lot of A/B testing we did through the journey. That was also very helpful to really understand what was working, what was not working, and cut out what was not working very quickly.
Which channel did you end up like focusing on early on as your driver of business? Was it more LinkedIn? Did you follow an account executive plan? Did you do direct marketing on social media? Which one worked best?
So frankly, social media and LinkedIn didn't work out at all for us. And there was a point of time I used to invest $20,000 a month when we were experimenting. Today, I would say it's less than $1,000 across all social media. We realized that because we are B2B, we needed to go to the communities, and a lot of our investments were offline and very targeted. A lot of the marketing, which also we did, was for the employees that are using the app. Because for us, it's very important to onboard the employer and then get access to the employees. So it might sound counterintuitive, but we realized that offline and very, very targeted marketing rather than any social media marketing was working out and giving us a much better ROI, a much better CAC.
Did you do any post-mortem on the social media channels like LinkedIn, which is a business channel, right? Why an investment like this doesn't usually work, although like your audience is sitting there, the HR managers, the firms are sitting there?
That's a lovely question. I'll tell you why. That is exactly the assumption I started with. Now, it's very important to understand who's our user base. Our user base is factories across Indonesia, often tier 2 cities. We assumed that the HR was there. Actually, none of the HRs were using LinkedIn because often it's a very offline kind of an experience. And maybe it's just how Indonesia or the developing world is. But after investing a lot of money on LinkedIn, we realized that only Jakarta or the two biggest cities, that's where the HRs were on social media, LinkedIn. But Instagram was much more powerful for us than a LinkedIn. It was just surprising that most people wouldn't use LinkedIn outside Jakarta.
That's very interesting to know. You mentioned you worked at Stripe before. Can you share with our listeners what are learnings that you brought with you from there and what are things that you had to unlearn?
I think first thing which I loved, and I spent 2 years at Stripe, one thing I loved about Stripe was the thoughtfulness. Any product, anything that was launched, there was a lot of rigor that went through that exercise. We were expected to write papers, express ourselves. Everyone really cared about the research which we did. I think that is what I really wanted to bring at GajiGesa. And I tried to inculcate that research-focused product strategy. The second thing I would say, which I really liked, was around culture. Again, a very open culture, very supportive culture, a product-driven culture. So that is, again, what we've tried to incorporate at GajiGesa, which has worked out pretty well for us.
You mentioned you work with your wife as your co-founder. For listeners who might be, going into business with their partners, how do you break the barrier between getting your workplace environment into the house?
Yeah, I'll start with the caveat. It is very, very tough. And I would not recommend to the faint-hearted. But keeping jokes aside, I think very important to set boundaries. I think first for us was that our skills were very complementary. So I'm the business guy. I would talk to the investors. I would raise money. I think about the numbers. She's very product and engineering driven. She understands how to build a product, how to think about good user experience. So we were very clear on decision making. From the start, we were clear that if it's a business decision, I get to have a bigger say. And if it's a product or a strategy discussion or a decision, Martyna gets to have a stronger say. So having clearly defined roles and complementary roles really helped us. Second was also disconnecting from work and trying to be more spouses, and something, frankly, we've been very poor at it, and we continue to try. But setting time aside over the weekends, making sure Friday date nights don't become like product discussions. You have your own separate time. Taking some holidays, often you end up working on holidays, but like blocking time, to enjoy each other's company. I think it's very important for the healthy relationship. There are a lot of positives when you work with your spouse. I think one is trust. When you're working with somebody outside, even though you may have known this person for a very long time, but there's always an element of building trust. And it also gets tested during tough times. The benefit with your spouse is that hopefully, in most cases, there'll be a lot of trust, which gives you that comfort that you're not questioning or double guessing your co-founder. The challenge is when times get really tough, especially at work, you often end up bringing that stress at home. So it's not been easy, but I feel like through constant communication, thinking about each other, building hobbies outside work that you enjoy and giving each other that time. My wife really thinks about longevity and health, and she spends a lot of time thinking about it, practicing it. She's a big fan of Peter Attia, and she does a lot of work. So that's her sacred space. I enjoy hanging out with my buddies, grabbing a beer on a Saturday. I am very social, so I like to go at events. So giving each other that space has also helped us. But again, anyone who's planning to do it with a loved one, it's not going to be an easy road.
Absolutely. I would be very interested to know your counter argument to investors, because a lot of investors might have passed saying, there is a key man risk or risk of having two co-founders, also family. What was your counter argument to that?
I think, first of all, if somebody, I've heard, it didn't happen to us, but a friend of ours, which was a couple as well, when they got the term sheet, it had a line item which said that one of the founders had to leave the board. And if we had been in that position, that was a non-starter for us. So we wanted to work with somebody who appreciates us as two co-founders. At the end of the day, we are still two individuals. We have our separate personalities. We have our goals, ambitions, which have grown and changed over time. But we only wanted to work with investors who are going to be supportive of the way we are and the position we are in, which is husband and wife. So frankly, and luckily, we've never been in a position where the investors that we are not going to work with you since you're a couple. But again, if I was in the position, even if there was a term sheet on the table, I wouldn't accept it. Because you already know there's a foundation there. If somebody is unhappy with you being a couple, that is going to lead to a conflict or disagreement, discomfort at some future stage. I'm actually quite lucky to have very supportive investors.
Yes. Is there a principle that you live by that has served you well on your journey?
A personality trait of mine, I always say, is I'm a very lazy person. And just because I'm a lazy person, I've learned to balance my life around it so that it makes me very efficient. I'm always seeking for efficiency because I don't want to do a lot of work. I like to prioritize tasks. Everything in my life is P0, P1, P2, because again, I want to not work very hard. I think I'm decently good at outsourcing tasks to my team and managing resources. I'm not somebody who's a micromanager. I like people to do their own thing and let it be because that gives me more space. And I like to analyze and think about things rather than jumping into a problem. Again, my trait of being lazy, that minimum effort, maximum solution, maximum results. So that is call it a principle, call it a way of life. But up till now, it's served me pretty well.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing this. One last question, Vidit. What's next for your company?
Yeah, so we are in our fourth year. Obviously, we talk about funding winter all the time, so time's tough. Last year, we told ourselves, especially H2, we are going to experiment a lot around our core product, not go and build something, not pivot, but test out the peripheries, the boundaries of what else is possible in the product. And we got some good results. But 2024 for us is pure focus. We have great product market fit. We have a product which the employers love and employees love. And my clear instruction to the company is heads down, just keep doing what we are doing, grow the business and see where it goes. Because we've had a good 2023 and we just want to replicate that. But most people would talk about all the cool things we're doing. We are just focused. We are just doing one thing which we're good at and we want to keep doing it and grow.
Amazing, Vidit. We wish you the best of luck on your journey. How can people reach you and are you hiring?
Oh, very kind. Am I hiring? Am I hiring for very few roles? These days I'm inspired of building a very lean team. And therefore there are certain roles around operations we're hiring, but generally we want to be very lean. The best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Vidit Agarwal. You'll get a reply very quickly.
Amazing. We'll put all of this in the show notes. Thank you for stopping by, Vidit. Have a great day.
No, my pleasure. It's a good chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the First 100. We hope it inspired you in your journey. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and share it with a friend starting their entrepreneurship journey. Leave us a 5-star review. Your support will help spread our podcast to more viewers.